Part 34. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 331. Yifeng did not take out his own immortal weapon because he was practicing boxing. One punch can break through all kinds of magic, and one punch can break through mountains and rivers. This is the power that Yifeng has always wanted to possess, because it is very handsome and can make his junior sisters crazy for a while. Thinking of this, Yifeng disappeared instantly, leaving only a shadow. When Shui Yuling, who was opposite, saw this scene, her beautiful eyes moved, as if she had guessed something, and she blocked the jade sword behind her without hesitation. Bang! Yifeng retreated slightly, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He had not expected Shui Yuling's reaction to be so quick. And he can also predict his own offensive. It seems I have to find another way to defeat you. Yifeng twisted his fist and whispered. But Shui Yuling didn't care what Yifeng was thinking. Taking this opportunity, her body with the jade sword in hand turned into a shadow and appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. Stab out with the sword without hesitation. But Yifeng didn't take it seriously. He held the sword easily, showed a smile and said. Your strength is too weak, and your swordsmanship is flawed. You can't hurt me at all. I advise you to find a better master. Seeing this, Shui Yuling did not speak. However, raining swords appeared all around, and his momentum immediately shook. Tens of thousands of sword rains, under the control of Shui Yuling, rushed towards Yifeng's surroundings. Seeing this scene, Yifeng had no fear on his face and directly shook Shui Yuling aside, and then punched the ground. With a rumble, boulders suddenly appeared one after another around him. The boulders were like an indestructible shield, firmly protecting his surroundings. Bang 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 bang. The rain of swords hit the boulders like raindrops, causing a crashing sound that continued to surround them like strings. Before Yifeng was ready to say anything, he saw Shui Yuling not far away charging towards the side again with a sword. His extremely fast speed only left a shadow in front of everyone. Bang! The boulder tore apart instantly, and Yifeng inside showed a hint of surprise at first, and then was knocked aside by the attack. Fortunately, Yifeng had extremely high combat experience and managed to calm himself down and land safely. However, he frowned, with a hint of displeasure on his face. He really didn't expect that Shui Yuling would actually launch a sneak attack. But I didn't say anything. I blame myself for being too confident and looking down on others. I also know that I can't let go, otherwise I will miss the victory. The next moment, I saw Yifeng's aura twisting and turning, blazing flames appeared on his fists, and his eyes turned fiery red. At this moment, Yifeng was like a god of fire, stepping towards Shui Yuling. Every time you take a step, there will be a burning mark on the ground, and your own pressure will become stronger. And a fiery red shadow gradually emerged behind him, which can also be called his law manifestation. Once you reach the celestial immortal realm, you can condense a law manifestation that suits you. As long as you have that talent, any divine beast can be your law manifestation. Seeing this scene, Shui Yuling's beautiful eyes moved, and a breeze suddenly blew around her. Chirp! A bird song echoed across the sky. The next moment, the shadow of a big blue bird appeared behind Shui Yuling. Shui Yuling also fought harder and harder, and his momentum became stronger and stronger. One after another, the sword blades were blasted away as if they were free of charge. And the momentum on his body is getting stronger and stronger. Boom! But in his heart, he was thinking about how to solve this battle perfectly. Yifeng couldn't help but cursed in his heart. Although it can't compare to the mythical beast, it is not inferior to it. And everyone outside the venue stared at the scene intently. She just wanted to resolve this battle as soon as possible. Although the idea was good, others would not give her this chance. However, Yifeng did not seem to realize that Shui Yuling's mana was about to bottom out, because the two were at similar levels, and he also there is no time to calculate. Phew. The pressure that hit her face made Shui Yuling's beautiful eyes narrow. She raised the jade sword in her hand and aimed at the approaching Yifeng and slashed hundreds of sword blades. The collision of the two shadows caused a roar. In the blink of an eye, Yifeng's figure suddenly disappeared, and then appeared on her left, punching Shui Yuling. Boom. But within a short time, the two had fought for dozens of rounds, and they still couldn't decide the outcome. Seeing this situation, Yifeng smiled coldly, didn't care, and walked over without any scruples. I'm too anxious. You are the only one who will suffer from this kind of attack. Although Yifeng is usually a bit mediocre, he is not a reckless man, but a person who knows how to advance and retreat according to the situation. But judging from the situation, Yifeng seemed to be suppressed. Moreover, during the fight, shadows of sword energy appeared around Yifeng from time to time. Then Yifeng stared closely at Shui Yuling's figure, seeming to be waiting for her next offensive move. Bang 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 bang. But how could Shui Yuling give him a chance? Without any intention of flinching, the blue-black bird behind him chirped, and a cold breath began to spread around, colliding with the shadow behind Yifeng. Countless collisions and fighting sounds reached everyone's ears. This series of attacks made Yifeng vomit blood. He didn't expect Shui Yuling to be so fierce. In an instant, Yifeng took advantage of an opportunity and blasted out his fire fist with all his strength, barely pushing Shui Yuling back, while his own figure quickly retreated not far away. When Long Tian, who was in the pavilion, saw this scene, his eyes moved slightly, then he shook his head and said. After thinking for a moment, Shui Yuling's beautiful eyes lit up, she picked up the sword in her hand and rushed forward. But these were all easily shattered by Yifeng. Although Shui Yuling had the upper hand in the scene just now, Ling Sanjiao could see that Shui Yuling's mana was almost at its bottom, and the fierce attack just now was just a desperate fight. Especially Ling Sanjiao, his palms were clenched into fists, covered with sweat, and his face was very nervous and worried. At the critical moment, Shui Yuling raised the jade sword in her hand and blocked the move, but she couldn't help but take a few steps back. Then the momentum shook, and the flames gathered in his hands, condensing into a huge fire fist. She is obviously a delicate woman, but she rushes over like an individual cultivator without any scruples. Seeing this, Yifeng sneered and fought with him without fear. Shui Yuling let out a breath, knowing that if this continued, she would always be the one suppressed. The big blue bird spread its gorgeous wings, and its sharp eyes stared at the shadow opposite. This was the blue-black bird. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 332. Some of the other participating disciples felt the same way. They all shook their heads and sighed. Some of them seemed to want to fight Shui Yuling. But now, it seems like there is no chance. Speaking of which, among all the disciples, Shui Yuling's strength was the worst. Because her ice body was not fully activated, she could only exert part of the ice power. Looking at the fight just now, you can understand that Shui Yuling rarely releases her ice power, but only uses swordsmanship to compete. In fact, she now needs a mentor, someone who can combine her swordsmanship with ice. Otherwise, her future will be worrying. I have talent, but I don't have the life to enjoy it. Although her master Qiu Zhou is a person who uses the power of ice, he does not know swordsmanship and only knows a little bit about it. Normally, there is nothing he can teach Shui Yuling. The other elder peak masters in the Profound Heaven sect also have their own things to do, and Qiu Zhou cannot ask others to teach his apprentice. On the field, the battle has gradually passed the time of a cup of tea. Shui Yuling's expression showed a trace of paleness, and her forehead also showed a trace of sweat. Her mana had indeed reached the point where it was exhausted. But there is nothing that can be done about it, because her swordsmanship and the power to control ice are indeed what everyone says. The power is small and the momentum is weak. Qin Xian, who was high in the sky, moved his eyes when he saw this scene. He saw Shui Yuling's physique and the problem with her swordsmanship. With this woman's physique and swordsmanship, we must find a suitable instructor, otherwise her great talent will be wasted. At this point, Qin Xian was speechless again to Qiuzhou. He covered his forehead and said, "I don't know how that guy Qiuzhou managed to teach such an extremely talented person to be like this." It's not that Qin Xian deliberately blamed Qiuzhou. But before, Qin Xian solemnly told many senior officials that if he couldn't teach his disciples, he could come to him. It's a pity that Qiuzhou didn't come, but insisted on going his own way. Didn't he know that doing so would ruin a genius? Of course, there are naturally some reasons for Qin Xian's fault, and it is not all Qiuzhou's fault. But there was nothing he could do about it, because he had been arranging some matters within the sect and system reward tasks, and had no time to pay attention to every disciple in the sect. What's more, Qin Xian has no time to take care of his own disciples, let alone others. Fate is really wonderful. By chance, the two slowly came together. Seeing this, Qin Xian nodded and said, "What do you think of Shui Yuling's talent?" The white-robed elder also appeared in the sky again and announced, "The winner of the fifth battle is Yi Feng. Shui Yuling, your magic power must have bottomed out, right? I advise you to admit defeat as soon as possible, otherwise you won't be able to withstand the next move." Thinking of this, Fang Gu didn't say much and nodded. Even if Qin Xian didn't say anything, he would find an opportunity to bring the two of them together. It's just that he is very careless when doing things. Every time he takes advantage of tasks, he travels around the outside world, admiring flowers and making friends in major cities. Although she possesses a body of ice, it is not fully activated, only a little activated, and her swordsmanship is also flawed, so her strength has stayed in the celestial immortal realm for a long time, and she has been unable to break through. Then Qin Xian gave him a few more instructions, waved him off, and continued to watch the battle in the field. Seeing that Shui Yuling didn't reply, Yi Feng didn't bother to say anything else. He slowly gathered the flames on his palm, then clenched his palm and punched out. Seeing this scene, Shui Yuling laughed sadly. Knowing that she was defeated, she sighed and disappeared from the field. His eyes were dim and he said in a deep voice, "In that case, let's leave this matter to Fang Gu." But he did smile in his heart. He knew that Ling Sanjiao had feelings for Shui Yuling. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the audience looked at each other with dim eyes, as if they didn't believe that Shui Yuling had lost the competition like this. Boom. You can clearly see from the competition just now that if her ice body and sword skills can be improved, her talent will definitely reach the top, and her strength will increase tenfold. It is precisely because she has such a top talent that I am going to ask you to let Ling Sanjiao teach her swordsmanship. As for this ice body, there is no need to worry about it for the time being. I will activate this body when I have the opportunity in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Gu's figure appeared in front of Qin Xian. Fang Gu raised his hands respectfully and said, "And now that the sect leader said this, it would be a good opportunity to bring the two of them together." Ah! Fang Gu looked a little surprised. He didn't expect Qin Xian to pay attention to this. Qin Xian raised his eyebrows. He had indeed discovered a person with extremely high talent in swordsmanship, and he also knew who this person was. This person is Ling Sanjiao. Fang Gu recommended this person to him before. He naturally knows this person, and this person can indeed be called a genius. Otherwise, with his talent, it would be impossible for him to stay at the peak of the celestial immortal realm, at least the peak of the golden immortal realm, and even the profound immortal realm. On the field, the battle between the two has reached a fever pitch, and it seems that the winner will be decided in the next moment. Shui Yuling couldn't resist and spit out a mouthful of blood. Her hair was spread all over her body and her beautiful clothes were messy. All that was left was the embarrassed figure that had just lingered in everyone's minds. Hearing this, Fang Gu's face was startled, and there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. He didn't understand what this sentence meant, but he still replied respectfully. The power emanating from it is shocking and creates an irresistible momentum. Yifeng raised his neck and curved his mouth. At this moment, a majestic and ferocious flame appeared around him, like a fire dragon hovering around him. After all, Qin Xian rarely paid attention to the sect's affairs during this period, and he didn't know how many new disciples had joined Profound Heaven sect. Metropolitan. Getting back to the topic, Qin Xian's deep eyes were seen scanning the entire Profound Heaven sect. The reason for doing this was that Qin Xian wanted to find out if there were any highly talented people in the kendo field in the sect. Upon hearing this, Qin Xian's expression did not change, as if he had already guessed that Fang Gu would answer this way. The talent is extremely high, but one cannot enjoy the pleasure that this talent brings. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 333. Why is this? Why did Senior Sister Xue lose to this guy Yifeng? Senior Sister Xue's talent is obviously higher than him. Yes. Why? Why would Xue Yuling lose to him? I won't accept losing to this bastard, and I won't accept it. The disciple roared unwillingly, but unfortunately, as soon as he made his voice, he was glared hard by the white-robed elder. That glance seemed to pierce the disciple's heart, and he shrank back in fear, not daring to speak any more, and could not stop breaking out in cold sweat. It seemed like he had just seen something terrifying. Despite this, some bold disciples still couldn't stop scolding this guy Yifeng. This made everyone in the field feel helpless. It was obvious that he had won, so why did he still scold himself? Could it be that I have offended you? Not to mention, Yifeng had really offended them before, otherwise it would not have caused public outrage. It's a pity that this is how it ends, no matter how insulting these disciples are. How to refute? It has no effect anymore. Because the sect competition is fair, it is impossible to let you return to the martial arts field just because you are powerful and famous. After all, it is unfair to other people. When Ling Sanjiao, who was staying under the peach tree, saw this scene, he sighed secretly and murmured, "Oh, this is not because of talent, but because of strength. If you have a good mentor, maybe you will shine today instead of leaving in embarrassment." What's more, this Yifeng's talent is not bad, after all, his master is that guy. A mighty and domineering figure appeared in Ling Sanjiao's mind. The figure's whole body was exuding ferocious flames, which seemed to be able to burn everything in the world. And this person is Huo Yi, the peak leader of Huoyun Peak. It was Huo Yi who was accepted as a disciple by Xiao Ran. Nowadays, Huo Yi's strength has reached the Immortal King realm, and he often travels to the outside world. His knowledge and artistic conception have also improved a step further. Especially his perfect control over flames, he can compete with a strong man at the peak of Immortal King 50-50. It's not too difficult to even have a chance with the powerful Immortal Sovereign. Speaking of which, the reason why Yifeng was accepted as a disciple by Huo Yi is actually a bit dramatic. Because this is a complete coincidence. During Profound Heaven Continent, Huo Yi was practicing on a mountain peak and happened to meet Yifeng, who failed to confess his love and was lost. When Yifeng saw Huo Yi, he thought he was a new disciple like himself. She sat down in front of him without any hesitation, complained to him, talked about her experience of relationship failure, and said that her talent was actually very strong, but she just didn't have the guidance of a famous teacher. Otherwise, we would never have fallen into such a situation. Because of his sincerity, Huo Yi chose to believe him and revealed his identity. In this way, Yifeng dramatically became his apprentice. Yifeng did not disappoint Huo Yi. His talent was not very strong, but at least it was not low. And his talent is not the reason why his strength can improve so quickly. Secondly, his perseverance and spirit are worth learning from others. Even Huo Yan's master, Xiao Ran, couldn't help but praise Yifeng when he saw his perseverance. As for why Yifeng's reputation is so bad in the sect, that Chun Chun did it himself, because he is so good at talking that he can even have a conversation with a dog on the roadside. He often likes to nag, and he doesn't shy away from it. Over time, some people find him annoying, but because of his status, they don't dare to say anything. Moreover, Yifeng also has a bad habit. He likes to tease junior sisters who are younger than him, which makes a group of admirers jealous. Forget it, some junior sisters already have partners, but he still teases them. Isn't this just provoking others? It is precisely because of this that everyone hates him, and it almost arouses public outrage. Some people even directly publish tasks on the mission hall. Anyone who can give Yifeng a good beating will be directly rewarded with 100,000 low-grade immortal crystal and a rank 3 immortal weapon. Not to mention, someone actually took on this task, but he didn't complete it, and instead got beaten up by Fatty himself. Those with low strength want to take this task, but those with high strength look down on this task because they do not lack these immortal crystals. And that mission, just like that, has been staying in the mission hall, waiting for a destined person to pick it up, but the number of immortal crystals has been increased to 300,000. Back to the subject, Shui Yuling, who had lost the fight, returned to her original position, put her hands on the table, and laid her head on it. This look was a bit cute. When Long Tian, who was sitting opposite him, saw this, he sighed secretly and said comfortingly, "You just don't have a famous teacher to teach you how to practice swordsmanship. When you have a famous teacher to teach you and improve your swordsmanship, you won't lose to Yifeng." Hearing this, Shui Yuling did not speak. It was not because of this, she just felt that she had failed her master's expectations of her. But some began to doubt themselves and their own strength. Shui Yuling was also a very strong person. Not long after the sect competition started, she lost the competition. If it were anyone else, they would be a little disbelieving and disappointed, because this is inevitable. Ling Sanjiao, who was under the peach blossom tree, also walked over at this time, looking at Shui Yuling's figure with a pair of bright eyes. However, he did not lean over and just watched quietly from outside the pavilion, although at this time he wanted to go to Shui Yuling's side, comfort her and care for her. But he was struggling a bit and didn't dare to face it, fearing that Shui Yuling wouldn't accept his feelings. After all, he rarely communicated with Shui Yuling and rarely met. He was even afraid that Shui Yuling wouldn't recognize him. If this was the case, it would have been very embarrassing for him to go to comfort him. This kind of scene was not what Ling Sanjiao wanted to see. Shui Yuling, who was lying on the table, noticed the mysterious feeling again, and suddenly sat up, looking around with her beautiful eyes. Unfortunately, Ling Sanjiao had just left here, and just like that, Shui Yuling missed the chance to meet again. Shui Yuling didn't see the person she wanted to see, and her heart was in knots. She began to feel slight pain, and a tear streaked down her cheek. Such a scene made Long Tian on the side feel a little strange, but after thinking about it, Shui Yuling lost the game and it didn't seem strange to show such an appearance. "What's wrong with you? Do you feel a little unhappy after losing this competition?" Hearing this, Shui Yuling looked up at him and shook her head. "It's okay, I just thought of some unhappy things." Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 334. Unhappy Things. Long Tian frowned, and when he was about to ask something, a voice came into his ears. The sixth battle, Long Tian vs. Yu Shui. Hearing this, Long Tian could only suppress his intention to ask, glanced at Shui Yuling, and then disappeared. On the field, Long Tian descended from the sky and entered the venue with a high profile. Such a situation made the female disciples outside the venue burst into cheers. Long Tian only smiled at them, then crossed his arms and looked at Yu Shui opposite him with burning eyes, his expression showing a trace of interest. Long Tian knew something about Yu Shui, because this woman was very strange, and the weapon she used was qin. It can be said that there are very few people who use this piano as a weapon in the 10 realms, or even none. Because few people pay attention to the music. After all, learning the piano takes too much time, and the rewards are not proportional to the effort, so it is better to learn swords, guns, swords, and halberds. Only ordinary people can learn and ponder the guqin when they have nothing to do. Yu Shui is wearing Xingyi. Her appearance is not good looking and can only be described as average, but her figure is indeed perfect, with a slim waist, slender legs, and plump breasts. If you don't look at her face, she can indeed be said to be top-notch. A beauty. At this time, she was holding a blue guqin in her arms. The whole body of the guqin was crystal clear, and every string was made of fine materials. Seeing this scene, Long Tian's expression was extremely dull and he said in an indifferent tone, "You should strike first, otherwise I'm afraid I'll kill you with one move and save someone from saying I'm bullying you." Hearing this, Yu Shui across from you didn't speak, his expression remained calm, and his pair of slender white pleated jade fingers gently touched the strings. Ding! The beautiful sound of the piano spread around, causing everyone outside the venue to relax and enjoy the feeling brought by the sound of the piano. Ding! Yu Shui stroked the strings again, but this time the intensity was obviously stronger, and the sound had a harsh tone. Seeing this, Long Tian raised his eyebrows, and a golden spear appeared in his hand. He wanted to see how powerful this piano was. Ding! The originally beautiful sound of the piano suddenly turned into a sound that pierced my mind. This sound shocked Long Tian's face. He had no time to be surprised and quickly used his spear to resist. Boom! It's a pity that he only blocked a piece of music. Countless music sounds will be waiting for him next. Ding ding ding! After stroking the strings 3 times in a row, a large wave of music appeared around Long Tian, and then under the control of the sound of the piano, it attacked him. Seeing this, Long Tian snorted coldly and dropped his spear. Boom! A roar that echoed all around came from the ground, and a large volume of music instantly turned into powder. It's a pity that this is not over yet. At this time, Yu Shui is playing the strings of the piano, his eyes are extremely charming, and the corner of his mouth shows a seductive smile from time to time. Waves of music came with the wind, and when everyone watching heard this sound, it seemed as if a beautiful picture appeared in front of their eyes. This scene made everyone fall silent, as if they were enjoying some kind of family happiness. I couldn't help but curse myself secretly. Seeing this scene, Long Tian cursed secretly. He began to feel a little aggrieved, but he could only bite the bullet and resist. Everyone watching did not dare to be distracted for a moment, clenching their fists and staring closely at this scene. The idea was good, but the reality was always miserable. Those annoying melodies kept appearing all around. As it went on for a long time, Long Tian gradually became exhausted physically and mentally. The other elders of the Profound Heaven sect couldn't help but be a little surprised when they saw this situation. They had indeed underestimated the woman Yu Shui. Ding ding ding! The two collided, and the golden dragon gradually dissipated, but the music did not disappear yet, but continued to rush towards Long Tian again. But when Long Tian heard the sound of the piano, he frowned and looked around warily. Then Long Tian danced with the spear in his hand, and the music was broken one after another by him, and the golden dragon beside him also rushed towards the water where the strings were floating on the other side. When Yu Shui on the other side saw this scene, her expression remained calm. Gradually, she stopped floating the Gukin, and her aura gradually developed a sense of ethereal. As long as you touch her, these rhythms will disappear. Then the Gukin floated in the quiet water again. Boom. Ding. Even as the spin began to spin violently, the music seemed to turn into a sharp blade, and the sound of slicing the shattering void sky came one after another. The pleasant sound of the piano is only superficial. If he really fell into love, then Long Tian's current situation would be very dangerous. High in the sky, Qin Xian had his hands behind his back, his face was dull, but he couldn't hide the light in his eyes. Seeing this, Long Tian gritted his teeth and roared, exuding a monstrous momentum. The next moment, a golden dragon hovered around, looking at the scene with burning eyes. Damn it! I saw that the Yushui on the opposite side was stroking the strings faster and faster, and the sound became sharper and sharper. It lost the graceful feeling before and turned into a strong murderous intention. The music of the strings rushed towards Long Tian continuously, surrounding him. Long Tian kept waving his spear to resist, and countless melodies were shattered by him, but then countless melodies struck again. On the field, countless melodies among them were shattered by him, but he could never get close to Yu Shui. Bang bang bang. Sure enough, you can't underestimate anyone. Yu Shui's slender fingers moved the strings, and bursts of music exuded a strong murderous aura as he rushed towards the attacking dragon. Bang bang bang. The sound of the piano is like a tide, constantly coming towards Long Tian, one after another. The mysterious and murderous melody keeps ringing around. This girl is interesting. If she can be trained more, she will definitely become a great help to Profound Heaven Sect in the future. The scene was at a stalemate. Long Tian kept resisting, and Yu Shui kept stroking the strings, her eyes overlooking the scene, showing a trace of sympathy and pity. At this moment, she was like a bodhisattva who saves all sentient beings. Unless Yu Shui is dealt with, these annoying sounds will never go away. Long Tian danced and fired the spear in his hand, and golden dragons appeared one after another, letting out dragon roars. At this moment, Long Tian has been completely restricted by these things, and coupled with his lack of experience, he can only passively resist and look for opportunities to fight back depending on the situation. One after another, rhythms appeared on her hips and limbs, pulling her into the sky. At this moment, Yu Shui was like a fairy in the sky, exuding an elegant and inviolable temperament. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 335. He has been suppressed all the time, so it can be said that he has no power to fight back at all and can only passively resist. If nothing goes wrong, if this continues, he will definitely lose. Thinking of this, Long Tian clenched his fists and looked coldly at Yu Shui high in the sky. But Yu Shui's expression remained unchanged, but he stopped floating the strings, and flew down from the sky like a fairy, with his jade legs touching the ground lightly, holding the water harp in his arms, and making a delicate sound. Elder, I admit defeat in this competition. What? After hearing this, everyone outside the venue was stunned, looking at the scene with some disbelief, and exclaimed one after another. It's obvious that if this continues, she will win. Why would she admit defeat at such an emergency? Everyone was really confused. The figure of the white-robed elder also appeared in the sky. Looking at Yu Shui's determined expression, the white-robed elder hesitated and said, "Are you serious? You must know that if you don't admit defeat in this competition, you will win. If you do, the reward for the competition will be nothing." Yu Shui shook his head indifferently and showed a charming smile. Although his appearance was not good, this smile really made some people addicted to it. In this competition, Yu Shui just used it to practice my piano skills. Now, I have found the next step to the advanced level of piano skills. Time does not wait for me, so Yu Shui must hurry up and go back. So, I'm very sorry about this competition with Yu Shui. Immediately, Yushui turned around, bowed to Long Tian, who was not far away with a shocked look in his eyes, and apologized. I'm sorry, brother Long Tian. Yushui didn't mean to ridicule you by doing this. It's just that I have touched the next level, so I have to seize the time to go back and advance the piano technique to the next step. When Long Tian on the opposite side heard this, he looked stunned for a moment, then came back to his senses, and quickly waved his hand and replied. It's okay, but you won this fight. Don't worry, when I get the ranking, I will reward you and I won't keep it to myself. Hearing this, Yushui's eyes moved, but he still refused with a smile. No need, senior brother Long Tian, I appreciate your gratitude. Then Yushui bowed to the white-robed elder high up in the sky, and then his body floated in mid-air, turned into a stream of light, and disappeared in front of everyone. Seeing this scene, the white-robed elder took a deep look at Yushui who disappeared before his eyes, and without saying anything else, announced the winner of this competition. When Xiao Ran, who was sitting at the elder's table, saw this situation, his eyes moved, he chuckled and praised. Yes, this girl really surprised me, and she has extremely high talent in piano skills. If she is cultivated, she will definitely become one of the pillars of our Profound Heaven sect in the future. I have to introduce this person to the sect master, otherwise I will miss out on such a talent. Wu Huai and others on the side also nodded without any rebuttal. After all, Yu Shui's behavior really surprised them. Especially for generosity, if it were an ordinary person, he might only care about the reward and not what he touched. Because in this competition, most people are looking for rewards for the top 10, and they will definitely not leave the field when they win the competition. At the same time, on top of a giant peak in Profound Heaven sect, a pavilion stands here, and in it, sitting two deist figures, they are Fanggu and Ling Sanjiao. However, Ling Sanjiao's expression was a little surprised and incredulous at this time, and he said suspiciously. You mean the sect leader asked me to teach Shui Yuling's sword skills? Fanggu looked calm and nodded while looking at him with a smile, and said jokingly, isn't that good? After all, this is your only chance. You can also take this opportunity to prepare with her. Cough, cough. Fanggu made a you-know-what-I-mean expression to Ling Sanjiao. Seeing this, Ling Sanjiao blushed and scratched his head. He was a little shy, but he was indeed very excited. But I was a little worried, not knowing how to face her later. Fanggu also seemed to see what was on his mind and said. You don't have to worry, and you don't have to find it difficult to talk about it. After all, you will always have to face this matter. It is better for you to face it sooner. Besides, why do you think Shui Yuling doesn't have you in her heart? Fanggu took a sip of tea and showed him a mysterious smile. Seeing this scene, Ling Sanjiao blinked, with a trace of doubt and confusion in his eyes, but he still shook his head and said. She definitely doesn't care about me. After all, I only met her once, and that time was when we were recruiting disciples at Profound Heaven Continent. And if she really had those feelings for me, why didn't she come to me? Hearing this, Fanggu helplessly covered his forehead and said. I want to ask you, does she know who you are? You just said that you have only met once, and she doesn't know who you are. What if she feels that way secretly? Maybe she also wants to see you very much, but she just doesn't know who you are. Hearing this, Ling Sanjiao looked startled, lowered his head again, thought carefully for a while, and found that this seemed to be the case. Shui Yuling didn't know who she was, or as Fanggu said, Shui Yuling actually felt that way about herself. But is this true? Ling Sanjiao looked a little suspicious again and asked again. But she hasn't even seen my face, so how could she have feelings for me? Isn't this a little unreasonable? Fanggu chuckled and shook his head, but seemed to have thought of something again. There was a hint of sadness in his eyes, and he said quietly. Because some people are destined to be destined. Maybe you two are not familiar with each other, or maybe you two don't understand each other, but as long as one person falls in love with another person, the other person will really feel it in their heart. It's just that I don't know who the kind of person makes me feel. That was the case with Fang Gu and his lover Feng Xiaoxiao at that time. Although they were not familiar with each other, their hearts would beat loudly every time they looked at each other. The love in their eyes could not be hidden at all, as if they had just glanced at each other. For thousands of years, it seems that the two of them were destined to be together. Ling Sanjiao glanced at Fang Gu and seemed to know who the person Fang Gu was talking about was. The two have a very good relationship and talk to each other about their feelings from time to time. The one Fang Gu always talks about is his lover Feng Xiaoxiao. Every time he hears Fang Gu tell him about his relationship with his lover, Ling Sanjiao is very envious. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 336. Gradually, Fang Gu's eyes became moist, but he still wiped away the tears with his hands. Whenever he mentioned these things, his heart would feel a tearing pain. He will regret it and hate himself very much. All this was done by himself. There is nothing wrong with being arrogant. What is wrong is that your arrogance is used in the wrong place. Ling Sanjiao on the other side saw the scene and came over and patted Fang Gu on the shoulder. Originally it was Fang Gu who came to persuade him, but now he is the one who persuades Fang Gu. Okay, I was the one who came to persuade you, but it ended up making me cry. Fang Gu wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes again, feeling a little ashamed, turned around and smiled at him. However, Ling Sanjiao could really feel the regret and deep sadness in his smile. This made Ling Sanjiao feel a little guilty. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Be more confident. No matter whether she has feelings for you or not, you have to give it a try. Although the process is bleak, the result is always good. Fang Gu watched Ling Sanjiao pat his shoulder and said solemnly. Hearing this, Ling Sanjiao nodded firmly and said, Okay, I understand. At the same time, the Profound Heaven Sect competition has been held for dozens of times, and many famous talents have entered the top 20. The final battle for hegemony is about to begin. Of course, among them, there are also many sect disciples who are making a lot of money. The huge stocks of immortal crystal are almost piled up into hills, and their own rings can hardly be accommodated. If someone wins, then of course someone loses. On the other side of the field, I saw a bunch of people kneeling on the ground crying bitterly. They had lost all their immortal crystals, and no one was left. And these people lost because they believed other people's rumors. Only those who had their own opinions made a small profit. So some people started complaining. Whoever the hell says someone is awesome or awesome in front of me again, I will beat him to death, which made me lose so many immortal crystals. Pests, horses, borers, grass. Half an hour later. The promotion competition for Profound Heaven Sect has officially begun. The body of the white-robed elder appeared in the sky again, his eyes looked down at everyone's expressions, and he shouted. The top 10 in the Profound Heaven Sect advanced to the first match, Long Tian vs Yi Feng. After the words fell, everyone was filled with grief and anger. They shouted loudly and talked about it. They just wanted to beat Yi Feng to death. Hearing the insults hurled at him by people outside the court, Yi Feng sighed helplessly, shrugged and said. As for what? At worst, I'll just change it next time, and I won't do anything to you junior sisters who have partners. After finishing speaking, Yi Feng looked at Long Tian across from him with a serious expression, smiled at him and held his hands in his arms. Long Tian naturally responded with a smile, crossed his arms, looked at him, curled up the corner of his mouth, and joked. Fighting to the death is enough to show that Yi Feng's character is actually not bad. The main reason is that he likes to be unrestrained, which means he is too pretentious. They were attacked by a group of black wolves. The strength of everyone was very low, and their eyes showed panic and fear. No one dared to stand up. In this emergency, only Yifeng stood up alone and resisted the black wolves. The attack of the demonic wolves. This happened just a few months ago. And Yifeng wasn't bad either. He was very powerful with his fists, and his ability to control flames was so powerful that Long Tian couldn't help but secretly smack his lips. Whenever he encounters a crisis situation, Yifeng will ask his junior brothers and sisters to retreat and go up to resist alone. He is not afraid even if he dies. Long Tian kept dancing with his spear, and golden dragons swept out one after another. It wasn't that the disciples who spread the rumors were very bad, it was Yifeng's behavior that made them feel unhappy. It's not an option to continue fighting like this. It will completely waste your mana, unless you find a flaw in Yifeng. When everyone at the elders' table saw this scene, they couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. I saw an old man with a long beard sitting at the back. Seeing this, he frowned and said in thought. Although Long Tian's offensive was very powerful, Yifeng could easily catch and block it every time. It's impossible for him to interfere in other people's private lives for such a thing. Besides, not everyone hates him, and some of them like Yifeng very much. Don't you see that there are so many people who like you? Tisk, 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 this scene really makes me envious. I'm afraid there are many junior sisters who like you, right? In the field. Hearing this, Yifeng snorted coldly. It was impossible to tell that he was mocking himself, but he also felt a little regretful. I can't provoke these guys next time. I have to correct my character. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be resented by the public, and I'll be beaten up by a group of people, which will be terrible. At that time, Yifeng led a group of people to wander outside to see the beauty of the 10 realms. It was going very well when they went there, but they suffered a disaster when they came back. Long Tian clenched his spear and said secretly. Digu, the master of the law enforcement hall who was sitting nearby, was speechless when he heard this. It wasn't that he didn't want to take care of it. Keep cheering. But Yifeng did not violate the Sect's rules. So the main reason is Yifeng himself. However, the disciples didn't see anything. They just felt that Long Tian was very comfortable pressing Qi Feng down and beating him, which made everyone feel extremely comfortable. Finally, an immortal king received the news of asking for help, rushed here quickly, and rescued Yifeng from the wolves. Long Tian shot Yifeng back to the side, but his face did not show any joy, but instead frowned. Some people can't stand the pretense, not to mention that some disciples who hate him like to spread rumors everywhere, which makes Yifeng's reputation very bad. It was precisely because of Yifeng's behavior that no one died in that battle, only Yifeng was seriously injured. Although Yifeng likes to nag, his behavior is worth learning from others. At this time, the two of them were already fighting, with flashes of light flying everywhere and a constant momentum. It could be said that they were fighting fiercely. Yifeng actually made so many disciples unhappy, and the people in the law enforcement hall didn't care about it. High in the sky, Qin Xian saw this scene. His face was calm and he didn't say anything, but his eyes showed an interesting expression. But how could Yifeng reveal his flaws easily? Instead, he fought steadily, taking blows after blows, and would even hit Long Tian with a punch from time to time. Yifeng, your reputation seems to be very famous in the sect. After fighting for so long, Long Tian suddenly realized that his moves didn't seem to have any impact on Yifeng. Therefore, this is enough to show that the gap between the two is not big. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 337. Looks like I have to use that move. I want to see if you can withstand it. Long Tian's face condensed, his spear shook, and a hint of dragon power seemed to emerge. He only heard a roar and the ground cracked. An unrivaled aura emerged from Long Tian's body. Then I saw several golden dragons hanging around him, slowly starting to gather together. Roar! A deafening dragon roar echoed through the sky. It seems like a dragon race overlord is about to be born. Everyone watching the battle was also shocked by this intimidation, and cold sweat broke out behind them. The next moment, a shadow of a giant dragon appeared high in the sky, hovering in the dark clouds, and roaring from time to time. A pair of dragon eyes stared intently at Qi Feng below. Seeing this scene, Qi Feng's face hardened, he clenched his fists tightly, and got very energetic. He knew that this was one of Long Tian's famous moves. However, Yi Feng did not have any fear. Instead, his eyes revealed a strong fighting spirit, and the flames on his body were burning brightly. Boom! A blazing flame rose on Qi Feng's body, and the flames kept spreading. Gradually, a flame wing appeared behind him. But it wasn't over yet, and then another fiery red shadow appeared behind him, with an extremely cold expression. Long Tian on the other side shook the spear in his hand, and his own mana continued to pour into it. Immediately, the giant dragon high in the sky let out a roar, and the roar spread across the entire sky, and it rushed directly towards Qi Feng from the high altitude. The momentum was so great that everyone was stunned and exclaimed. Even the powerful men at the elders' table couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise when they saw this scene. The aura of this move is really powerful. I can even feel a sense of threat even if it gives me a golden immortal realm. Yes, after all, Long Tian has reached the level of proficiency in marksmanship. If he is trained, I believe his achievements will not be inferior to those of the 7 peak masters. Several elderly elders gathered together to talk, their eyes couldn't stop admiring and praising Long Tian. Only the great elder Ling was sitting at the top of the table, with a calm expression on his face, as if he was not surprised by the aura exuded by this level. Seeing the giant dragon rushing toward him at extremely fast speed, Yi Feng clenched his fist tightly and slammed the ground. With a bang, the ground shattered, and the flames around him continued to gather. The shadow behind him gradually grew larger, until it became a 10,000-foot shadow. This kind of phantom has far exceeded the power possessed by the celestial immortal realm. Even the true immortal realm cannot match the momentum of the two. The tall figure did not show any fear towards the attacking dragon, and his eyes were extremely cold. 2 fists as thick as buckets came out with a sky-reaching aura, and aimed at the attacking dragon with all their strength. Boom! The two collided, causing dust and smoke to fly, causing a roar. After the dust and smoke cleared, everyone quickly looked around and saw a tall figure with 2 arms blocking the dragon's impact. The momentum of both sides kept colliding and converging. The people watching the battle stared at this shocking scene with wide eyes. They had never seen a battle between top experts. Although Qin Xian's previous battle was very amazing, not everyone saw it, only some people saw it. The battle between the strong men of the celestial immortal realm was the strongest battle they had ever seen in their lives. Boom! Long Tian continued to inject mana, and the impact of the golden dragon became heavier and heavier. It was like a huge mountain in the sky, pressing hard on Qi Feng's back. Phew! Qi Feng's face was as pale as paper, and the shadow in front of him became increasingly blurry, as if it would disappear in the next moment. This is because the mana in Qi Feng's body has been exhausted and gradually exhausted. If this continues, Qi Feng will not only lose, but even his own foundation will be damaged. But Yi Feng doesn't want to stop, he doesn't want to give in, he wants to test where his limit is. At the elders' table, Huo Yi's figure suddenly appeared here, standing with his hands behind his back, looking at the scene with dull eyes. Then he shook his head and sighed. Turning around, he cupped his hands towards Xiao Ran and said, "Master." Seeing this, Xiao Ran nodded and waved to him, asking him to come forward. Huo Yi understood the meaning and sat next to him. Xiao Ran looked at the scene in the field and said, Bibi Yifeng has already lost this time. After all, Long Tian's talent and strength are indeed much better than him. It's not surprising that he lost. Hearing this, Huo Yi didn't speak, nodded, and said calmly. I wasn't optimistic about him entering the top 10. After all, except for Long Tian, the strength and talent of those three guys can be described as abnormal. What's more, Tianming is still here. This person is also a big obstacle to him. Even if he doesn't meet Long Tian, he has almost no chance of winning when he meets other people. After all, those people have been on the road longer than him, and have much more experience than him. Although Huo Yi just never appeared at the scene, he had actually used his consciousness to quietly watch Yifeng's battle. After all, Yifeng is also his apprentice, and the relationship between the two can be said to be that of both teacher and friend. Admit defeat, Yifeng. If you continue like this, your potential will be exhausted. Do you know that this will damage your foundation? Seeing that Yifeng was still insisting, Long Tian couldn't bear it and opened his mouth to comfort him. Hearing this, Yifeng laughed sadly, clenched his fists, and then let out a long sigh. The shadow in front of him gradually disappeared. I surrender. Seeing this, Long Tian put away his spear and patted him on the shoulder. Instead of taking this opportunity to laugh at him, he praised him. You have done very well, but I have been on the road longer than you and have higher talent than you, so this is the gap between you and me, but I also believe that you will have the opportunity to surpass me in the future. Hearing this, Yifeng glanced at him and nodded. Then, the figure of the white-robed elder appeared on the field and announced the result of this competition. When everyone watching the battle saw this scene, they cheered instantly. Good fight, senior brother Long Tian, I love you and avenged us, ha ha ha. That's right, senior brother Long Tian beat him well. Long Tian in the field glanced around, did not speak, but turned into a stream of light and disappeared in front of everyone. It's interesting. It won't be long before the battle between me and that guy. I hope that guy won't let me down. A man in Xingyi was sitting in the field, looking at the scene with a smile on his face. Then, the white-robed elder stepped into the air and said in a deep voice. The top 10 in the Profound Heaven sect advanced to the second round of the competition, Tianming vs Songfeng. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 338. As soon as he finished speaking, the two figures appeared in the field. Songfeng was the man in green clothes. He was holding a sharp sword in his arms. After all, although the sword was not unsheathed, it could not hide the chilling chill. When Tianming on the other side saw this scene, his eyes showed a trace of solemnity. He felt a little threatened by this guy, and felt invincible. It seems you have to be more careful when dealing with him. Then he instantly transformed into hundreds of clones. Seeing this, Songfeng's expression remained calm, as if he had already guessed that Tianming would use this move. The scabbard of the sword in his arms shook, and a hint of killing intent emerged from it. There was a boom. The next moment, the sword intent shot out in all directions, and hundreds of clones disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then Songfeng retracted the sheath and operated smoothly, and his figure never moved. It was as if the move just now was not done by him. Seeing this situation, Tianming, who was hiding at the back, shrank his pupils. He never thought that Songfeng's sword intent would be so powerful that these clones of his could not even hold on for a breath. The people watching the battle were also dumbfounded and shocked by this scene. This was completely different from Shui Yuling's swordsmanship, and it was completely inferior to the big one. Powerful. Only these two words flashed through everyone's minds, which was enough to show Songfeng's status in their hearts. Even the elders at the elders' table couldn't help but make a sound of admiration. As expected of Master Lin's disciple, this elegant and uncluttered swordsmanship is probably his true inheritance. Yes, it's even worse. It's just strange. Why didn't I see Peak Master Lin today? The speaker's eyes revealed a hint of doubt. I don't know. It seems that Master Lin has been delayed by something. Otherwise, if his apprentice is competing here, he wouldn't be able to come and watch. And there are still several Peak Masters who have not come today. After hearing this, everyone looked at each other and said nothing more. Only Ling Wu, who was sitting in the first place, moved his eyes slightly when he heard this, and looked into the distance with a trace of worry. I hope you can make it. On the field, Tianming looked at Song Feng opposite him solemnly, but in his heart he was thinking about how to deal with him. But Tianming also had to sigh that this person's swordsmanship was the strongest he had ever seen. Junior brother Tianming, although your clone will cause trouble to others, it will have no effect at all on someone like me who is good at using swords. Therefore, senior brother advises you to use your real skills. Song Feng, who was on the opposite side, still stood there, looking at Tianming with a smile on his face, and seemed to have no intention of attacking. Seeing this scene, Tianming chuckled, and the long black knife from before appeared in his hand again, and a strange aura emanated from it. Then Tianming looked at Song Feng coldly and said in a deep voice, "Okay, I'll satisfy you." After the words fell, Tianming's figure instantly transformed into several phantoms that kept flashing around Song Feng. The strong momentum made Song Feng's eyes light up. Finally, let me take it seriously. Let me see if you are worthy of my full treatment. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Feng's scabbard suddenly flew into the sky. Immediately, Song Feng's figure moved, he jumped into the sky and pulled out his jade sword. With a gorgeous turn, he raised the sword and slashed at Tianming. Bang! Tianming raised his knife to block it, golden light raged, and the turbulent momentum swept through the vicinity, and then violently shook Song Feng away. But Song Feng smiled calmly at this, and the sword in his hand instantly turned into hundreds of phantoms. In an instant, a large amount of sword energy shot through the shattering void sky. The harsh sound made Tianming's face freeze, and he quickly raised his knife to resist. Bang bang bang. One after another sword energy was taken and shattered by Tianming. Unfortunately, this was just a test by Song Feng. The best is yet to come. The next moment, majestic sword energy appeared around Song Feng like a long river, like spiritual snakes one after another. Immediately, Song Feng's expression changed, and the jade sword in his hand began to tremble under the influence of the sword energy. Because from the beginning to the end, Song Feng never took this battle seriously. After all, with Tianming's current strength, it was not worthy of him to actually take action. Boom! However, this was exactly what Song Feng wanted. Dong dong dong. Without some innate ability, it is impossible for Yin soldiers to serve as Tianming's law manifestation. Junior brother Tianming, you really surprised me, but you also want to show me how powerful your Yin soldier is. Ha! Song Feng's eyes gradually became serious. Cough, cough. Because the system seems to have crashed recently, it has not started to solve Qin Xian's doubts. The dust and smoke slowly dissipated. The shadow of a man wearing black armor, holding a long knife, and with a cold face appeared in front of Tianming. On the field, Qin Xian, who was high in the sky, couldn't help but stroke his chin when he saw this thing. As far as he knows, there is no underworld or heaven in this world, but there is such a thing as Yin soldiers. A pair of exposed blood-colored eyes makes people's hair stand on end, frightening them, and making them unable to resist at all. A crossblade rushed towards Tianming. After hearing this, Tianming still just sneered. It was impossible for him to admit defeat, not to mention, his strength was not limited to this. Tianming knelt down on one knee and pressed his knife against the ground, trying to keep himself as steady as possible, but he kept breathing loudly, which was enough to show that the injury he suffered from the move just now was not serious. After all, the Yin soldier is not that easy to deal with, because it is a dead thing. Songfeng played with the jade sword in his hand, looked at Tianming with sharp eyes, and said in a lazy tone. The dust and smoke dispersed, and the ground slowly shook. Is it as powerful as the legend? It was something condensed from hundreds of thousands of dead souls. If it exploded with all its strength, it would be so terrifying that it would be unimaginable. The next moment, the knife inserted in the ground suddenly emitted a majestic evil spirit, as if there was some peerless monster hidden in it. Tianming did not take this move, and was hit in the chest by the sword blade. His figure kept falling back. At this critical moment, Tianming directly inserted the knife into the ground and barely stopped. Songfeng looked at the powerful aura exuded by the Yin soldiers and said with a smile. Junior brother Tianming, are you okay? If not, I advise you to admit defeat as soon as possible and don't waste time, otherwise I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand the next offensive. This made Qin Xian feel a little curious, but he didn't think of asking the system. When Songfeng saw this scene, his expression remained calm and he did not take this opportunity to rush forward. Otherwise, Tianming would have been unable to block the first move just now. Snort. Yin soldiers. Bang. This scene made Songfeng look slightly surprised, as if he had guessed what this thing was. Oh. Seeing this, Songfeng, who was opposite him, half squinted his eyes and looked at this, seeming to sense something interesting. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 339. As he finished speaking, the jade sword in Songfeng's hand was slowly vibrating, and an ethereal aura gradually began to emerge. This aura swirled around him, slowly condensing into a humanoid shadow that exuded majestic sword intent. When everyone watching the battle saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel doubly surprised. This was the first time they had seen Songfeng take the competition seriously. After all, in previous competitions, Songfeng always had a playful mind and only showed them a few moves, never taking them seriously at all. Interesting, it's so interesting. I didn't expect that Songfeng would start to take fighting seriously. This is really a surprising thing. When a man in white clothes and holding a folding fan saw this scene, a smile appeared on his lips, as if he had seen something interesting. On the field, I saw that the two had already begun to fight fiercely. Bursts of sword light and sword shadows kept scattering. The auras exuded by the two are constantly colliding. The roars and collisions were like the sound of firecrackers, and holes were drilled into the ground one after another. Not bad, but there is still room for improvement. Seeing that Tianming could fight with him continuously, Songfeng showed a smile on his face and praised him. But then his face instantly turned cold. Then a large number of spiritual swords appeared in front of him. Immediately, Songfeng's jade sword became like a whirlpool. Hoo. The next moment, all the spiritual swords began to gather rapidly towards the jade sword in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into a giant sword in the sky. The giant sword of the sky exudes a strong golden light, standing in the sky like a golden dragon. The aura emanating from the giant sword made Tianming feel more pressure, and his face turned pale, as if there was a big mountain pressing on his back at this moment, making him unable to breathe. However, Tianming didn't show any fear and still took out the long black knife to resist the incoming momentum. Seeing this scene, Songfeng looked indifferent, holding the sky sword in his palm, and said coldly, "As long as you catch my move, I will immediately admit defeat in this fight. I hope you won't let me down." Upon hearing this, Tianming's expression changed and he was speechless. But the remaining mana has been continuously poured into the blade, and it seems that it is ready to resist desperately. Boom! A shattering sound came. I saw the golden light emitted by the giant sword covering the sky and the sun, like a golden dragon made of gold. With a roar, the giant sword of the sky slashed through the shattering void sky, and fiercely struck towards the sky. The momentum was deafening, resounding throughout the heaven and earth. Everyone watching the battle was dumbfounded, as if they had witnessed a shocking scene that would be unforgettable in their lifetime. Even I have to avoid the edge of this move. I don't know if Tianming can block it. If he can block it, then he will become a legendary disciple of the younger generation in the sect. A strong man mixed in the crowd stared at the scene with stern eyes and murmured to himself. However, everyone did not notice the strong man. If they noticed the strong man's face, they would definitely scream in surprise. Because this person is one of the three geniuses of Profound Heaven section Getaway. Although his name is not good sounding, his strength is actually extremely powerful. It is said that when Wang Gengkai was on a mission outside, he encountered a monster in the true immortal realm. However, Wang Gengkai did not have any timidity or fear. He rushed forward and beat monster to death with his bare hands. You must know that at that time, he was only in the middle stage of celestial immortal realm. This is enough to show how powerful Wang Gengkai's talent and strength really are. At the elders' table, Ling Wu, who had been silent at first, suddenly spoke up. If we can't stop it, Tianming will lose this battle. When several elders nearby heard this, their expressions were shocked, and they respectfully raised their hands and asked. Great Elder, can you explain why this is happening? Ling glanced at several people and said calmly. There is no reason. There is a huge gap in strength between the two. You will know after reading it. After hearing this, several people looked at each other, but they didn't say anything more and continued to watch while looking at the field. With their strength, they really can't tell much. On the field, Tianming was pressed tightly by the giant sword of the sky, and his face turned pale. But he still didn't give up. He gritted his teeth and resisted violently. The next moment, he saw a loud bang coming from the long knife in Tianming's hand. The Yin soldier in front of him also suddenly burst out with a strong momentum at this moment. Then the two began to slowly merge into one, and Tianming had already transformed into a Yin soldier. At this moment, Tianming seemed to feel endless power, and he immediately charged towards the sky sword with a long sword in hand and a determined look on his face. Boom! The long knife collided with the giant sword, causing a loud noise. The aura exuded by the two was extremely dazzling. But Songfeng still looked at him with a calm expression, but his eyes looked at Tianming with admiration. The ground beneath Tianming's feet began to crack. Because of the momentum of the two, strong winds began to rise all around, and the gravel was constantly being rolled up, like a doomsday catastrophe. Cough. Tianming didn't block it and spit out a mouthful of blood. But the giant sword of the sky did not stop, but slowly struck towards his chest. At this critical moment, the white-robed elder who had been missing suddenly appeared in front of Tianming with a calm expression and a tap of his finger. Ding! The original giant sword of the sky disappeared in an instant and turned into nothing, as if it had never appeared. Songfeng also reacted, walked over quickly, helped Tianming up, and said a little embarrassedly. I'm sorry, junior brother Tianming, this was not my intention. I only released 70% of my power. I thought you could block it, so I didn't care. I wonder if you were injured anywhere. Hearing this, Tianming looked at him with wide eyes and spit out a mouthful of blood again. Is this what a human said? 70% of the power? Does this mean that if Tianming releases his full strength, will he disappear instantly as soon as he collides with it? Junior brother Tianming, what's wrong with you? Why are you vomiting blood again? Seeing Tianming spit out a mouthful of blood again, Songfeng's expression suddenly became anxious. He quickly put his hand on his chest and began to carefully check his injuries. I don't know that this was caused by him in Versailles, but it is undeniable that Songfeng did not do it on purpose. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 340. Although Songfeng was a bit aloof, he was still very warm-hearted towards disciples younger than himself, and would often teach the younger ones as an elder. You can guess it by watching the competition. The white-robed elder glanced at the two of them lightly, warned Songfeng with his eyes, and then disappeared from the place. When the disciples watching in the field saw this scene, they had not yet recovered from the previous battle. They thought Tianming could block this move, but they didn't expect that Tianming instantly withered away just a few seconds after the collision. Such a scene really surprised them. A grey-robed disciple looked at the people around him, hammered the ground hard, and said, "Damn, I thought senior brother Tianming caught that move, but he didn't. It's a pity." Several people nodded after hearing this, then helplessly spread their hands and said, "Similarly, we think so too. It seems that we still underestimate senior brother Songfeng's strength. Senior brother is indeed not comparable to ordinary people. Furthermore, didn't you hear what senior brother Songfeng just said? He only used 70% of his strength, and 30% of his strength was left unused. Yes, senior brother Songfeng is too versatile. I don't know what kind of exciting battle senior brother Wang will have when he fights against him. I really want to see it." An outstanding-looking woman sat aside with stars in her eyes, and her tone revealed a look of expectation. Although she knew it was impossible, she was still a little excited. Unexpectedly, Wang Gongkai was sitting not far from her and happened to hear what she said. Seeing this, he shook his head helplessly, got up, and left. He was a taciturn person. While the sect competition was going on, a life and death battle was taking place thousands of miles away from here. The realm of life and death. On a plain where the land is black. Boom! A huge thunder sounded in the sky. I saw a charming woman wearing bloody red clothes stepping in the air. And below, not far from the woman in red, a dying man in black clothes, with a pale face, was lying there. There was still a large amount of blood on his body. Near him, there were corpses lying there one after another. These were all people wearing Qingxian Taoist robes. They are all disciples of the profound heaven section. The strongest among these people have reached the golden immortal realm, while the weakest are only in the human immortal realm. The man is Han Chuang, and the woman is Su Minjiao. However, Su Minjiao's face didn't look good at this time, because opposite her, there were 4 men standing in the void. The auras of the 3 of them were no weaker than Su Minjiao's, and they even had the faint intention of surpassing her. Surrounding the 4 people, there were hundreds of figures with powerful auras wearing various robes. These people are all subordinates of the 4 people, and each of them looks at themselves with fiery eyes. Su Minjiao clenched her fists, her sharp nails pierced the white and tender skin, and the blood instantly soaked the entire palm of her hand. Seeing this scene, Su Minjiao felt helpless, but she could only use her last bit of magic to deal with them. "You are really a rebellious beauty, and I like you like this. After I surrender you, let me taste how you taste." What's more, Su Minjiao is now surrounded by 3 strong men at the peak of the Great Saint realm. It is harder to escape from the tiger's mouth than to reach the sky. A desperate struggle ensued. Am I going to die here this time? They are the evil demon palace, the evil ghost gate, the black water sect, and the death palace. Because the man's lower abdomen has gradually begun to feel hot, as if he wants to break out of the ground. Unfortunately, due to the overwhelming number of people on the other side, in the end, all profound heaven sect and others died one after another. Only Han Chuang barely survived under Su Minjiao's desperate resistance. Even so, the people here are not afraid. The reason why they came here was because they were instructed by Qin Xian to go to the realm of life and death to investigate the relationship, and then come back and report to him. Su Minjiao also felt nauseated, but she still endured it. She looked around with a pair of beautiful eyes, as if looking for an opportunity to escape from here. They are obviously a group of humans, but they are doing things that are inferior to pigs and dogs. To be honest, this was the first time for a man to behave like this, but there was nothing he could do about it. Who made Su Minjiao look so good looking? The process was originally very smooth, but unfortunately, because Su Minjiao's appearance was so eye-catching, she was noticed by the evil ghost sect among the four major forces. Look at Su Minjiao's alluring legs, which are extremely white, and those arched feet, they are really fascinating. Among them, countless innocent people have been implicated by them, and many families have been separated. Among the four, a man who looked young had an evil smile on his face, and his eyes were filled with obsession and vulgarity. But unfortunately, this is the realm of life and death, a chaotic place, a place without any order. The strength of each of the four major forces has reached the peak of the ancient saints. There are even rumors that one of the four major forces has the existence of the immortal emperor. Then he couldn't wait to order the three people behind him. He kept licking his dry lips with his tongue, as if he really wanted to have Su Minjiao. The three people behind him heard this and nodded respectfully. They immediately took out their own immortal weapon and rushed towards Su Minjiao aggressively. Because the realm of life and death is so terrifying, people die here all the time, including people with powerful backgrounds. Here, human life is not valuable, and many people from the other 9 realms among the 10 do not want to come to this realm of life and death. Speaking of this, Su Minjiao glanced at Han Chuang, who was lying on the ground dying, with a look of reluctance. He even licked his lips with his tongue. This scene was really disgusting. Unless a force like the human temple comes to encircle and suppress them, who can conquer the realm of life and death? The face of the man headed by the 4 of them could not be described as vulgar. He was even more perverted than perverted. But this appearance did not make the man unhappy, but made him even more obsessed with Su Minjiao's body. It's so beautiful. It makes me drool. I'm afraid if I meet such a beauty, I'll be so happy. Of course, the people from these 4 major forces can be said to be a group of demons that are not human, and their behavior is even worse than demon race. Su Minjiao was stared at by the man's disgusting eyes, which made her feel a little nauseous, and she bit her lower lip tightly. Hurry up and capture this beauty. I want to enjoy it. I can't hold it anymore. The realm of life and death is controlled by 4 major forces.